My mom was best friends with Jen since they were kids. They met in first grade and were inseparable after that point. My mom and dad met in college and got married a couple of years after they graduated. I was born a year into their marriage. After mom had me, Jen had 2 kids and she was single, so my mom would help her out. But then when I was 5-ish, my mom found out dad was the father of Jen's kids and that they'd been having an affair for who knows how long. My mom divorced my dad. My dad didn't want to divorce my mom. My mom also ended her friendship with Jen and hated her even more than my dad. She felt like Jen should have been one of the people she could trust most in the world, and Jen shattered that. My dad and Jen had a rocky start to their official relationship because my dad didn't want mom to divorce him and he tried to get her back. My mom's family hated Jen and my dad for what they did, and Jen most of all because they had known her since she was a kid and had treated her like another daughter/sister within the family. They went from all being close to they would ignore Jen even if she tried talking to them. My dad's family never forgave dad for destroying his marriage to mom. They really loved mom and had bonded with me, but not my dad and Jen's sons. So for them it wasn't some great thing, yay more grandkids, because they knew it fucked with my life. That meant there was some tension between them and Jen because Jen expected them to be excited from the start. My mom died when I was 10 because of a blood clot. So I went to live with my dad and Jen, and because of the bad blood they kept me away from my maternal side of the family, and I didn't get to see my paternal side for the most part because of Jen's issues with them. A couple of years after mom died, Jen and my dad were expecting another baby, their 5th, but she died while Jen was pregnant. Jen wanted my mom's family to be there for her since she wasn't super close to her own family, and growing up mom's family had felt like hers. But they shunned her again, and according to Jen they felt she deserved it because she hurt my mom. That's what Jen says they told her anyway. Could be true. Could be lies because she wanted me to pity/side with her. When I lived with my dad and Jen, before and after mom died, Jen tried to keep a good relationship with me because she was Auntie Jen before mom found out she's sleeping with dad. She tried to be my second mom. And because I was the only living girl, it meant Jen was more desperate for some girly time with me. I went along with it sometimes, but I always felt gross being around her. I know my mom would have never wanted me to love Jen like Jen wanted me to love her. And I didn't like that Jen's part in hurting my mom and making my life harder. So I tolerated her, but I didn't get close to her like she wanted. My relationship with dad was always weird too. I know he loved me and he acted like a good dad. But I could never get over the mess he made of our lives. It made me lose respect for him. So I moved out a few months ago. I'm still 17, but I made the excuse that the boys could all have their own rooms, and it made sense, and I just left and moved in with my maternal grandparents. That's where I live right now. Anyway, onto the problem of whether I'm TA or not. Jen always said she wanted to take me shopping for prom, and when I lived with her and dad I never said no. She talked about it some more after I moved out. But in December I told her I wasn't going with her, and I told her I was going with friends so she'd freak less. Then I messed up and posted on Insta, which I didn't know she followed me on, and she was pretty pissed about it. My friends were there too, but so were my grandma and 2 of my aunts. Jen was pissed, so I didn't answer her calls or read her texts. But then dad called and tore me a new one for doing that to Jen when I knew how much it meant to her. He told me she's suffered enough and to punish her more isn't healthy. Then he told me I should love her and that I should realize my mom and all my extended family failed me because I could have had a happy family with him and Jen, but that the bitterness made sure it would never happen. And he said it's about time I accept it. Comment 1. NTA. You owe those homewreckers, your father and your stepmonster, nothing. Side note, is your father paying your grandparents' child support? Because he should be. Comment 2. NTA, your dad and Jen broke your family. They forced you into this position and even went and isolated you from your maternal side of the family. She doesn't deserve to take you prom dress shopping. Even if you took her when you didn't want to, what would happen in future events you don't want to include her in? Is she gonna push and then have your dad call you to yell at you? Jen doesn't deserve the time of day, and either does your dad after what they did. Story 2, I'm 34. She's 39. We've been together 8 years. She has a 15-year-old son and I have a 14-year-old son. About a week ago, her son found out my son was sucking the face off his girlfriend. Her son came home and I had to break up a fight. That night, we were woken up to them fighting in my son's room again. Next morning, they went to school and my partner suggested that I send my son to my parents for a few weeks. She said, "You can't be proud of him." I said what he did was shitty and I'm not proud of that, but I'm still proud of him. I gave out a lot and grounded him, etc. The fighting continued and probably a week later she brought up the idea again. She said he needs to move out until they calm down. I repeated, until they calm down. I said there's only one of our sons starting fights, hers. She was furious and said her son is the victim. I said to a point. I disciplined my son for what he did. She should do the same for all the fighting her son is starting. Then a few nights later, she called saying my son broke her son's hand and it's my fault for not sending him away. Turned out, her son had thrown a chair at my son and they started pushing each other and he fell and broke his hand. They surprisingly resolved stuff after the visit to the hospital, but my partner is not happy. She thinks I downplayed cheating and said I should have sent him away and still should. 2 weeks on, she is still very unhappy. Comment 1, ESH. I think she should have taken her kid and leave, and I'm not saying this because of her demands. I think she should have supported her child and give him space, where your son wasn't around him. Comment 2. NTA. Your son was punished. Her son wasn't. Her son continued to escalate things and cause issues. She still did nothing. Keeping your son in the home was the right thing to do. This was a teaching moment and I think you both let the opportunity pass you by because you weren't a united front. Story 3, I, 33F, became friendly with my neighbor, 37F, let's call her Emily, after I helped her move a few boxes into our building while her husband, 35M, was in the hospital. I didn't meet Emily's husband until a few weeks later when she invited me over to dinner as thanks. When I arrived first, Emily's husband had run out to pick up some wine, but when he came back I was shocked to see Matt, a guy I had gone on 3 dates with a year ago before he suddenly ghosted me. He had a terrible poker face and tried to pretend like he didn't recognize me. I don't play those games. I asked how long they had been married and Emily said 3 years. She recognized there was tension and asked if we knew each other. He said no. I said yes and told Emily that I had gone on dates with him a year ago. She became very upset and asked me to leave, which I did. The next day, Emily reached out and said that she didn't appreciate that I lied about when I dated her husband. He told her we had dated 4 years ago, before they were married. I didn't even live in this city 4 years ago. And even if we had dated 4 years ago, they had been engaged at that point. Either way, he would have been cheating. I sent her screenshots of our texts from the year before and from Bumble of his profile, which was still active. She never responded, but when I saw her in the lobby yesterday, she wouldn't even look me in the eye. I don't know if they're still together and Emily hasn't responded to my texts. Update: Emily just stopped by. We had a quick chat, but she let me know that she's kicked Matt out and she thanked me for telling the truth. She also found out that I was not the only person he dated while they were married. Giving her space now, but wanted to share an update since it happened so quickly after posting. Comment 1. If I was Emily, I would probably ask you to leave too, because I wouldn't want you to witness me screaming at my cheating dirtbag of a husband. NTA, you did the right thing. I just saw your update where she came and thanked you. Hopefully that gives you some peace. I like people like you. No games, straight up, honest and dignified. Comment 2. NTA. You didn't cause the problem, you just exposed it. Dude literally ghosted you and is still on Bumble. He played himself. If Emily's mad at anyone, it should be her lying, cheating husband, not you. You did her a favor, even if she's not ready to see it yet. Comment 3. NTA. She needed to know her hubby is a cheating R. She's shooting the messenger by being rude/avoiding you. That's on her, not you. Maybe she'll finally grow up one day and thank you for your honesty. Story 4. My 31 fiancé Jeremy, 32M, and I were flying out to Louisiana to visit my parents in preparation for our wedding 2 months from now. Jeremy and I look very different from each other. We're different races, different backgrounds, different styles, cultures, etc. We never look like we're going to the same place or even like we know each other. Frequently I've walked in behind him at restaurants and they'll address him and be like, "Just one tonight?" It's honestly whatever. Just another thing about us. He's also, and this is important, a very anxious man with an intense fear of flying. He needs me near him at all times while flying. He even starts panicking if I use the restroom. Before you ask, no, we couldn't drive or take the train for reasons I don't want to get into. On the second leg of our trip we were sat in a 3-seat row. Him by the window already looking out of it with his headphones on, me in the middle, and a stranger, M, on the aisle. Once the stranger sits down, his wife follows him and asks me if I'd be okay switching seats so she could sit next to her husband. I said no, sorry, I need to sit here. You can try the person behind him or behind you. She quickly got pissed and told me she needed to sit there way more than I did because she was pregnant and her husband was there. For context, I could barely see her bump. She was maybe 4-ish months, but not struggling to get around at all. I pointed at Jeremy and told her, well, my fiancé is here and loses his shit if he flies alone, so no, I'm not moving. Sorry. Jeremy noticed me pointing at him and took off his earbuds. She started to raise her voice and asked, well, what about this? She pointed to her stomach and I said, Mom, all due respect, but how's it my problem? Who knocked you up? Not moving. At that point the guy behind her in line snapped at her to go to her seat and she finally left. The husband was catatonic, no response at all. It was kind of impressive. We took off and during the flight between panic attacks Jeremy told me he was glad I was there but he wished I was nicer about it. We landed with no problem until we got into the airport and she shoved past me on the way to the baggage claim so hard I almost fell over. Comment 1, NTA. Being pregnant does not entitle anyone to anything. She asked. You said no. That should have been the end of it. If she needed to sit next to him, she could have paid extra or gotten an accommodation from the airline. Her lack of landing is not your. Comment 2. Literally their next option should have been asking her seat neighbor if they wanted to switch with the husband. Why did that not occur to them? You asked, you got an answer, move on to your next option on the list. There'd be some logic to her unnecessary entitlement if it was a window seat, but a middle seat? Comment 3. Definitely NTA. If she had needed so badly to sit next to her husband because she's pregnant, then they should have purchased seats next to each other. Also, your response to her was hilarious. I booked an Airbnb for April the 2nd to the 5th. I first messaged the host, Alex, on March 17th with a couple of questions about the stay. After multiple days with no response, I got nervous since the trip was coming up and I didn't want to be stuck scrambling for a place last minute. By March 22nd, after 5 days of silence, I reached out to Airbnb support to see what my options were. Airbnb automatically gave Alex 72 hours to respond. When she still didn't, the booking was cancelled. I found another place and moved on, assuming she just wasn't an active host. Fast forward to today, she finally messaged me, after the cancellation, and was upset. She claimed my booking never should have gone through because those dates were previously blocked, then blamed me for cancelling and said I cost her a fee and blocked other potential bookings. I explained the situation politely, but she kept going, making passive-aggressive remarks like sounds like I dodged a bullet. I responded by pointing out that she had 5 full days to reply before I ever contacted Airbnb, and Airbnb's own policy gave her another 3 days before cancelling. This wasn't some impulsive decision on my part, it was a lack of communication on hers. Her final message basically implied that she had been on a vacation herself, had been fully booked for months, and that this situation had taught her a lesson. It felt sarcastic, like she was blaming me for messing up her schedule when, in reality, she had plenty of time to respond but didn't. At this point, I'm asking Airbnb to block her from messaging me because I don't see why she's still reaching out after everything was handled. Also, for any Airbnb hosts, does anyone know what this fee she's talking about could actually be? I don't see how she'd be charged for me cancelling after she ignored my messages for nearly a week. Comment 1, NTA. Also, you should contact Airbnb and request to block the host from messaging you. Send them copies of the unsolicited and uncivilized responses, and advise it hurts Airbnb's reputation with a combative host to potential clients. She will no longer be an Airbnb host for long.